After falling off a cliff, the rancher was taken by a mysterious forest tribe and saved. The sun had barely risen when the rancher stepped out of his small cabin, the crisp morning air brushing against his face. The mountains around his ranch were alive with the gentle sounds of nature, birds calling to each other, the rustle of leaves in the wind, and the distant trickle of a stream. The rancher loved these quiet mornings. They were a reminder that no matter how hard life got, the world still moved on, steady and patient. He walked toward the edge of the property, inspecting the grazing cattle that dotted the open fields. Breath. Everything seemed normal. His boots crunched softly against the dry dirt path as he made his way to the cliffs that bordered the property. These cliffs were beautiful, jagged and majestic, rising like silent sentinels over the valley below. But he had always known to respect them. They were dangerous if one was careless. As he reached the edge, he squinted down at the rocky slope beneath him. A recent rain had made the surface slippery, and some rocks looked loose. He sighed, thinking he should have worn gloves and better boots for inspecting the boundary. His hands brushed against the worn leather strap of his utility belt as he checked the fence posts near the cliff, but a few had begun to lean with age. Carefully, he stepped closer to the edge to examine one particularly wobbly post. The ground beneath him was uneven, a mixture of dirt and small stones. He shifted his weight, and for a brief moment he felt the ground slip slightly beneath his boots. Heart pounding, he froze, gripping the post to steady himself. And then it happened. The earth beneath his feet gave way. He tried to scramble back, but it was too late. His legs tumbled downward, twisting as he fell. The air rushed past him in a cold, shocking blast, and a wave of panic surged through his chest. The fall seemed endless, a terrifying blur of rocks and trees and sky. He felt himself hitting branches on the way down, each one leaving small cuts and bruises. The final impact sent him sprawling onto a jagged rock surface, knocking the wind out of him. Pain shot through his leg and back, sharp and unrelenting. For a long moment he lay still, trying to breathe, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The world was quiet now, except for the faint sound of wind weaving through the trees and the distant call of a bird. He groaned softly, testing his limbs. His leg was badly hurt, possibly broken, and his arm throbbed where he had struck the rocks. Every movement sent a jolt of pain through his body. Panic began to creep in. He was alone, miles from the nearest road. His cabin, his family, even his loyal dog that always followed him to the fields, were all out of reach. His phone was in his pocket, but he remembered immediately. It had no signal here. The cliffs and the surrounding forest were too remote. There was no way to call for help. He forced himself to stay calm. Panicking would not help. It would only waste energy. He shifted slightly, trying to find a position that was less painful. Every motion was agony, but he knew he had to stay conscious. Night would come quickly in these mountains, and he did not want to be trapped in the cold darkness without any protection. Hours passed slowly. The sun climbed higher in the sky and then began its slow descent, casting long shadows across the rugged terrain. The rancher tried to move toward what looked like a flatter area, thinking it might be easier to find a safer place to rest. Every attempt sent a sharp pain through his leg, but he forced himself forward, dragging his body inch by inch. He spoke aloud, talking to himself to stay awake. "You've survived worse. Keep moving. Just keep moving." By late afternoon, exhaustion began to settle into his bones. His mouth was dry, his throat parched, and his stomach knotted from hunger. He found a small ledge, a natural indentation in the cliffside, where he could rest. He leaned against the rock, trying to ignore the pain and catch his breath. He closed his eyes for a moment, only to hear a faint sound that made him snap them open. There was something moving in the forest below. At first, he thought it was just an animal, a deer or a fox. But then he realized the movement was deliberate, almost human. A shadow darted between the trees, too fast and quiet for any normal visitor to these cliffs. His heart skipped a beat. Could someone be down there? Was it another hiker? Maybe a hunter? Or someone else? Fear and hope collided inside him. He tried to call out, but his voice was hoarse and weak. No answer came. Only the rustle of leaves. The figure, or figures, watched him from a distance, silent and still. It was impossible to tell how many there were, or even if they were alone. The uncertainty gnawed at him. As darkness began to creep over the cliffs, he realized he had to make a decision. He could try to climb down, risking further injury, or he could stay put and hope that whoever or whatever was out there might approach. His body ached, his mind was tired, but he knew he could not lie still forever. The cold began to seep into his bones as the sun disappeared behind the mountains. The first stars appeared, faint and distant, and he shivered. He wrapped his arms around himself and tried to stay alert. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves made him tense. P thought of his life back at the ranch, his chores, the animals, the quiet mornings, just like this one. He had never imagined that a single misstep could lead to this, round and desperate. And yet here he was, teetering between fear and hope, unsure of what awaited him in the shadows of the forest. Hours passed like this, the darkness thickening, the forest sounds growing louder and stranger. He could hear the hoot of an owl, the distant roar of a waterfall, and something else, something almost human in rhythm. Footsteps? No, too soft. The heart pounding. He tried to focus on any sound that could tell him who or what was nearby. Just as he felt his eyelids grow unbearably heavy, a figure finally emerged from the shadows. It was tall, moving with a grace that suggested experience and skill. The rancher froze, unsure if he should speak or remain still. The figure stopped a few meters away, watching him carefully. Then, in a series of slow, deliberate motions, the figure gestured for him to stay calm. The rancher's mind raced. Was he dreaming? Was this real? But the figure remained, and he realized that this was no ordinary stranger. There was something different, something almost otherworldly, in the way they moved, the way they observed him. They were cautious but not threatening, their presence calm and deliberate. He tried to nod to show he meant no harm, and the figure responded with a slight tilt of the head. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, they beckoned him to move. The rancher hesitated, pain shooting through his leg, but something in the figure's demeanor told him that he had no choice. Help was here, if he could trust it. The first step was agonizing. He gritted his teeth and shifted his weight, the pain almost unbearable, but the figure waited patiently. By step he followed, guided by the silent signals of this mysterious helper. The night was cold, the cliffs dark, and the forest below seemed like an endless maze, yet he felt a strange sense of safety he could not explain. Desperation. Eventually, they reached a flat clearing where the figure paused. From the darkness, more shadows emerged. The rancher realized he was surrounded, but not in a threatening way. These were people, humans, but unlike anyone he had met before. Their clothing was made of natural materials, their movements quiet and deliberate. They were a tribe of the forest, living in harmony with nature, hidden from the outside world. For the first time since his fall, the rancher felt a glimmer of hope. Brace. He was injured, scared, and exhausted. But he was no longer alone. He had been found. The forest tribe had rescued him from what could have been a fatal night, and though he did not yet understand their ways, he instinctively knew that he was in good hands. As the tribe carried him further into the forest, away from the cliffs and toward their hidden home, the rancher closed his eyes, letting the pain and fear slowly ebb. He had survived the fall. He had survived the night. And though he did not yet know what awaited him, he felt a cautious optimism stirring deep inside. Somewhere in the heart of that forest, his life was about to change forever. The forest was alive with quiet energy as the rancher was guided deeper into its heart. Every step, even when taken by his silent rescuers, seemed deliberate and careful. The moonlight barely filtered through the dense canopy above, creating silver patterns on the forest floor. The rancher tried to take in his surroundings, but his injuries made each movement painful. His leg throbbed with every step, and his back ached. Yet he could not help but marvel at the beauty surrounding him. The air smelled fresh and earthy, scented with moss, pine, and wildflowers. His rescuers did not speak in words he could understand. Instead, they used gestures, pointing to clear paths, signaling him to slow down, or gently guiding his hands when he stumbled. They seemed to anticipate his every movement. Though he could not understand their language, their actions conveyed a sense of care, patience, and wisdom. For the first time since his accident, he felt that he was in safe hands. After what felt like hours of careful movement, they arrived at a small clearing hidden deep within the forest. The sight that met the rancher's eyes left him astonished. A cluster of small huts, crafted from wood and large leaves, sat camouflaged among the trees. Smoke rose from a few chimneys, carrying the faint scent of cooked food. Around the clearing, people moved gracefully and silently, tending to fires, preparing meals, and caring for children. The rancher realized he was witnessing a way of life entirely different from anything he had known. He was led to a larger structure at the center of the settlement. Inside, a fire burned brightly, casting warmth across the simple interior. The walls were decorated with woven mats, carved wooden figures, and carefully arranged stones. One of the tribe members gestured for him to sit while another approached with a bowl of warm water. The rancher drank slowly, savoring the warmth and the relief it brought to his parched throat. The tribe examined him carefully, checking his wounds and speaking softly among themselves. They worked with gentle hands, cleaning cuts, wrapping bruises, and securing splints for his injured leg. Despite the language barrier, their intentions were clear. They wanted to heal him, to keep him safe. The rancher could not help but feel a growing sense of gratitude. He had expected fear, perhaps hostility, but instead he found compassion and understanding. As he rested, he observed the tribe more closely. Their clothes were made from natural materials, soft woven fibers, animal hides, and leaves. They moved with a fluid grace, each gesture purposeful. Even their children seemed attuned to the rhythm of the forest, playing quietly but alertly, their eyes bright and curious. The rancher felt both humbled and amazed. He had always known that humans were capable of incredible adaptability, but this was beyond anything he had imagined. He wanted to speak, to ask questions, but words failed him. Instead, he relied on gestures, pointing to his leg and making small sounds to indicate pain. The tribe responded immediately, adjusting the splints, massaging gently, and offering him food. The meals were simple but nourishing: roots, fruits, and small portions of cooked meat. The rancher ate slowly, each bite a reminder that he was alive and being cared for. As days passed, he began to recover physically, though he remained weak. During this time, he started to learn more about the tribe. They taught him through demonstration, showing how they gathered food, filtered water, and treated injuries. He noticed that every task had a rhythm, a flow, and a purpose. The rancher was fascinated by how seamlessly they moved through the forest, how they seemed to understand every sound, every movement of nature around them. At night, the tribe gathered around fires, sharing stories through gestures, songs, and the occasional hum or chant. The rancher listened closely, trying to understand the meaning behind each movement and sound. Though he could not speak their language, he began to feel connected. There was a quiet wisdom in their actions, a harmony with the world around them that he had never experienced. It made him reflect on his own life back at the ranch, where routines often left little room for wonder or mindfulness. Despite the warmth and care, the rancher could not ignore the thought of home. He wondered how long he had been missing, whether anyone was searching for him, and how he would explain his disappearance. The tribe seemed aware of his inner conflict. They would watch him with calm eyes, offering gestures that seemed to suggest patience and reassurance. It was as if they understood that the rancher was struggling with more than just physical recovery. He was navigating fear, uncertainty, and longing all at once. One morning, the rancher woke to the sound of children laughing and running through the clearing. Their joy was infectious, and he found himself smiling despite his aches. A few of the older children approached him cautiously, holding small objects, carved pieces of wood and colorful stones. They offered them to him with shy gestures, inviting him into their games. The rancher accepted, feeling an unexpected lightness in his heart. Even amidst injury and uncertainty, he was beginning to feel a sense of belonging. Over the next several days, the rancher became more active, helping with small tasks the tribe allowed him to attempt. He carried firewood, fetched water, and helped prepare simple meals. Each task, though challenging due to his injuries, made him feel useful and appreciated. The tribe responded with smiles, nods, and gentle gestures, encouraging him without pressure. Slowly, the rancher realized that his perspective on strength and survival was changing. It was not only about physical ability, but also about patience, observation, and learning from others. During one quiet evening, the tribe led him to a high clearing overlooking the forest. The rancher could see the sprawling trees stretching as far as the eye could see, their dark shapes blending with the night sky. The moon cast a soft glow over the landscape. For the first time, the rancher felt a deep connection to the forest itself. It was alive, protective, and full of secrets. He felt a mix of awe and humility. Here he was just one person among countless living things, yet he felt respected and included. As the days turned into a week, the rancher began to understand more about the tribe's customs. They worked together seamlessly, supporting one another in ways he had never experienced in his solitary ranch life. Every member, young or old, had a role, and every action seemed purposeful. He was impressed by their resourcefulness, how they made tools from simple materials, built shelters that blended into the forest, and moved without leaving a trace. He realized that their way of life was not primitive but refined in its own intelligent, harmonious way. The rancher also discovered that the tribe valued observation over speech. They communicated through gestures, expressions, and subtle sounds. At first, he felt frustrated by his inability to speak with them, but gradually he began to see the wisdom in their methods. Words were sometimes unnecessary when actions and intentions were clear. He started to mirror their gestures, responding with nods, hand signals, and careful movements. Slowly, a bond began to form, not just between him and the tribe, but between him and the forest itself. One afternoon, while helping to gather edible roots near a small stream, the rancher noticed a sudden change in the forest's atmosphere. The birds had gone silent, the wind had stilled, and even the water seemed to flow more quietly. But he glanced at his guides, who were alert and tense, signaling him to stay close. Though he did not understand fully, he followed their lead. In that moment, he realized how deeply attuned the tribe was to their environment. Every rustle, every movement, every sound had meaning. The rancher also began to notice how the tribe healed themselves. They used herbs, roots, and poultices, combining them with careful attention and knowledge passed down through generations. One tribe member approached him and applied a healing paste to his leg, demonstrating the method patiently. The rancher felt relief as the pain began to ease. Though he missed modern medicine, he could not deny the effectiveness of their practices. They respected life, both human and animal, and sought balance in every act. At night, the rancher often lay awake, listening to the forest symphony of sounds, the soft crackle of fire, the distant hoot of an owl, the whisper of leaves. He felt a mixture of longing and wonder. He missed his home, but also felt grateful for this unexpected journey. The forest, the tribe, and the experience of being cared for had begun to reshape his understanding of life, trust, and resilience. One evening, as the stars appeared above, the rancher watched the tribe perform a quiet ritual around a fire. They sang softly, their voices blending with the sounds of the night. Though he did not understand the words, he felt the intention behind them, a connection to the earth, gratitude for life, and respect for all living beings. He realized that his fall, terrifying as it had been, had led him to a place of learning and growth. He had survived. Yes, but he had also discovered a way of seeing the world he had never imagined. The rancher's journey with the tribe had only just begun. He had found safety, care, and a community he could trust. But even as he healed, a quiet thought lingered in his mind. The world beyond the forest still existed, with his home, his ranch, and his past life. He wondered how and when he would face that reality, and whether the lessons he had learned here would guide him when the time came. For now, though, he allowed himself to rest, surrounded by people who had saved his life, in a place that felt both mysterious and comforting. The forest whispered around him, and the rancher knew that every sound, every gesture, and every moment would shape the next chapter of his story. Days passed quietly at first, but the rancher began to feel stronger with each sunrise, drowned in desperate. His leg, though still tender, allowed him to move more easily. He could walk short distances without the tribe's constant support. Each small improvement brought a spark of hope to his heart, along with a sense of determination. Breaths. He wanted to prove to the tribe and to himself that he could contribute, that he was not just a burden to their care.
Early one morning, the tribe called him to a clearing where several members had gathered.
They gestured for him to carry a small bundle of firewood. At first he hesitated, thinking his leg might not hold. But their calm and patient expressions encouraged him. With careful steps he lifted the wood and followed their lead, walking slowly but steadily. Each step tested his balance and strength, but by the time he reached the fire, he felt a small thrill of pride. The tribe watched silently, nodding approvingly. He sensed that this simple act had earned their respect. Over the next few days, the rancher was invited to participate in more of their daily activities. He helped with gathering roots and edible plants, learning to distinguish between safe and dangerous species. The tribe demonstrated how to extract clean water from streams and leaves, how to build small traps to catch fish, and how to move quietly through the forest to avoid startling animals. The rancher absorbed every lesson, often fumbling at first but improving with each attempt. One afternoon, while helping to repair a small hut damaged by recent winds, the rancher felt a surge of frustration. His hands were raw, and the knots he tried to tie seemed impossible to secure. One of the older tribe members noticed his struggle and gently guided his fingers, showing the correct technique. The rancher realized that patience was just as important as strength. He took a deep breath, adjusted his approach, and finally managed to secure the structure. The tribe responded with warm, approving smiles. But for the first time, the rancher truly understood the value of learning from others without pride or haste. The forest itself became his teacher as well. The rancher began noticing subtle signs in the environment. Broken branches indicating animal paths, unusual sounds signaling changes in weather, and patterns in the stars that hinted at time and direction. The tribe had trained him not only to survive but to observe and respect the forest. Every day he felt a growing bond with the land, as if it recognized him as someone willing to adapt and understand. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the rancher was called to assist with a small emergency. A young child had wandered too close to a stream and slipped, but thanks to the tribe's quick response, the child was safe. The rancher helped lift the child and comfort them, noticing the relief and gratitude in the tribe members' eyes. That simple act made him realize how deeply trust could be earned through careful attention, courage, and compassion. The rancher's growing confidence was tested more seriously a few days later. A sudden storm swept through the forest, fierce winds rattling the huts and heavy rain soaking the ground. The tribe moved swiftly, securing shelters, protecting food stores, and guiding younger members to safe areas. The rancher joined them, carrying bundles of supplies and helping to reinforce structures. Desperate, every step was exhausting, but he refused to stop. The tribe responded with nods of encouragement, silently acknowledging his determination. When the storm passed, the rancher felt a deep sense of accomplishment. He had faced real danger and emerged capable and respected. Death. Through these experiences, the rancher also began to reflect on his own life back at the ranch. He realized how isolated he had been, wrapped up in routines and work, often forgetting to appreciate the simple beauty of life. The tribe's way of living, attentive, patient, and respectful, made him see that survival was not just about strength, but about awareness, care, and balance. He felt humbled by their knowledge and grateful for the lessons they had shared. The tribe's children continued to play around him, drawing him into their games. They taught him small survival tricks through playful challenges, how to jump over shallow streams, identify edible plants, and build simple tools. At first he struggled, but the children's patience and cheerfulness encouraged him, pressed to second his bond with the tribe, and gave him a sense of belonging. He was no longer merely a guest or patient. He was becoming a part of their world. One morning, the tribe led the rancher to a high ridge overlooking the forest. They gestured for him to observe the land, pointing out subtle changes, animal trails, areas prone to flooding, and natural shelters. The rancher realized that they were teaching him not only survival skills, but also awareness and foresight, crucial for living safely in the forest. He watched carefully, memorizing each detail, understanding that knowledge and observation could save a life as surely as strength or courage.
Not all lessons were easy.
During one task, the rancher had to climb a steep rocky incline to help repair a watch point for spotting wildlife. His leg protested with every step, his muscles burned, and he nearly slipped several times. The tribe remained nearby, silently guiding him, their calm presence giving him courage. When he finally reached the top, exhausted but successful, they acknowledged his effort with subtle gestures of respect and approval. The rancher felt a deep sense of pride and belonging. The forest itself continued to teach him in unexpected ways. One morning, while gathering food near a small creek, he noticed that the water's surface reflected unusual ripples. Pausing to observe, he realized it indicated a fish was swimming just below. He remembered a lesson from the tribe and gently placed a small net into the water. With patience and careful timing, he caught a fish, earning approving nods from the nearby tribe members. That moment reminded him that attentiveness and calm action often mattered more than force. Trust between the rancher and the tribe deepened further during a particularly tense situation. A sudden landslide occurred on a nearby slope, sending rocks tumbling into the forest below. The tribe immediately moved to secure vulnerable areas, while the rancher, though nervous, helped guide younger members to safety. His actions were careful and deliberate, reflecting the lessons he had learned. When the danger passed, the tribe's subtle smiles and gestures of acknowledgement made him realize that he had become an integral part of their community. The rancher also began to understand the tribe's respect for all living things. They treated animals with care, harvested plants responsibly, and moved quietly through the forest. He learned to mimic their approach, understanding that survival required not only skill but respect for the environment.
The forest was alive, and he was now part of it in a way he had never experienced before.
Each day brought new discoveries. Edible berries he had never tasted, medicinal herbs for injuries, and the quiet beauty of untouched streams.
One evening, after a long day of learning and working, the rancher sat near the fire with several tribe members. Though he could not speak their language, they communicated through gestures, shared food, and exchanged small stories through expressions and actions. The rancher felt a deep sense of connection. He realized that trust, respect, and shared effort had built a bond stronger than words alone could convey. Rancher also reflected on his own resilience. He had fallen from a cliff, faced isolation and uncertainty, and yet he had survived. Now he had survived not just physically but socially and emotionally, earning the trust of a community he had never known existed. The lessons he learned went beyond survival. They were lessons in patience, humility, observation, and empathy. Finally, the rancher faced a test that would solidify his place among the tribe. A small wildfire began near the edge of the settlement, spreading quickly in the dry forest. The tribe responded immediately, guiding each member to safety and forming lines to prevent the fire from spreading. The rancher, though nervous, followed their instructions, helping to move children and carrying water to dampen small flames. Every action required precision, courage, and focus. By the time the fire was under control, the rancher was exhausted, soot-covered and bruised from moving through the rough terrain. Yet, as he looked at the tribe members' calm nods and gentle smiles, he felt a profound sense of achievement. He had faced real danger, acted decisively, and contributed meaningfully. For the first time, he realized that he was not merely a visitor in their world. He had become a trusted member.
That night, as he lay on a simple mat in the central hut, he reflected on the past weeks.
He had arrived injured, frightened, and uncertain. Now he was stronger, more aware, and deeply connected to the tribe and the forest. He had learned survival, resilience, and the importance of trust and observation. And yet, a quiet thought lingered in his mind. The world beyond the forest still existed, and one day he would have to face it again. But for now, the rancher allowed himself a moment of peace. He had survived, he had learned, and he had grown. But he was no longer just a rancher who had fallen from a cliff. He was someone transformed by the forest, by the tribe, and by the lessons life had unexpectedly taught him. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But he felt ready. He had earned his place in a world he had never imagined, and he knew that whatever came next, he would face it with patience, courage, and a deep respect for life. The rancher woke before sunrise, the forest around him wrapped in a soft, misty silence. For weeks, he had learned to move quietly, observe carefully, and live with patience and awareness. Now, as he lay on his mat, he realized that his journey with the tribe had changed him in ways he could hardly describe. But he was stronger, wiser, and more connected, not just to the forest, but to life itself. Yet, deep inside, a quiet thought lingered. He could not stay forever. Both his home, his ranch, his familiar life awaited him beyond these trees. When he stepped outside, he found the tribe waiting. Their gestures were calm yet purposeful, signaling that it was time to guide him back. The rancher felt a mix of gratitude and nervousness. He had been safe here, cared for and accepted, but the outside world presented unknown challenges. Still, he knew he had to return. With careful steps, he followed the tribe through familiar paths, retracing the route that had brought him here. The journey back was both easier and more difficult than he had expected. His leg was stronger now. His endurance improved, and his confidence had grown. Yet the forest was unpredictable, and every step required attention. The tribe moved silently around him, offering subtle guidance when needed. He noticed small details he had previously overlooked: slopes where water might pool after rain, branches that could trip him, and animal tracks that hinted at movement nearby. With each step, he realized just how much he had learned. One afternoon, the group reached a narrow gorge.
A stream ran through it, its waters rushing swiftly over stones.
The rancher paused, unsure of the safest way to cross.
The tribe gestured calmly, showing him a route along stable rocks. With careful balance and attention, he crossed, feeling a surge of accomplishment as he reached the other side. The tribe nodded in approval, their silent communication conveying trust and pride. The rancher understood that he had earned his place, not just as a guest, but as someone capable and dependable. As they moved forward, the forest began to thin, and the familiar sights of the outside world became visible. Distant hills, small roads, and rooftops appeared on the horizon. The rancher's heart quickened. He was leaving the comfort and safety of the forest, stepping back into a life that had felt distant and almost unreal. Yet he also felt a sense of readiness. He had survived, learned, and grown. He knew that whatever awaited him, he would face it with the skills and wisdom he had gained. On the last evening in the forest, the tribe led him to a small clearing with a view of the valley below. They gestured for him to sit and observe. The rancher looked at the trees, the winding paths, and the distant mountains. He realized that this place had become a part of him. The tribe had not only saved his life but had transformed his understanding of survival, trust, and human connection. He felt gratitude beyond words, bowed his head in silent thanks, hoping that somehow the tribe could feel it. The final part of the journey was the most challenging. The terrain became rougher, the paths less certain, and his leg, though healed, began to ache after long hours of walking. Yet he pressed on, guided by the tribe's subtle signals. The lessons he had learned, patience, observation, careful decision-making, were tested with every step. He realized that survival was not just about strength, but about applying knowledge, remaining calm under pressure, and trusting oneself.
As they approached the edge of the forest, the rancher saw a familiar road winding through the valley.
He recognized the sight instantly. He was close to home. A wave of emotion washed over him. Relief, excitement, and a touch of sadness for leaving the forest and the people who had cared for him. The tribe stopped at the edge, signaling that this was as far as they would go. They gestured silently for him to proceed alone, but he understood that the bond they shared would remain, even at a distance. He turned to the tribe one last time. He could not speak their language, but he tried to convey gratitude through gestures, bowing slightly, placing his hand over his heart, and offering a small nod. The tribe responded with gentle smiles and subtle nods, their eyes conveying understanding and respect. It was a quiet farewell, yet filled with unspoken meaning. The rancher stepped forward, leaving the safety of the forest behind, carrying the lessons and strength he had gained with every step. The road led him to familiar territory, the outskirts of his ranch, the fields he had tended, and the buildings he had maintained. At first, everything seemed almost unreal. The cattle were grazing peacefully. The fences stood tall and the mountains loomed in the distance. Unchanged by his absence, the rancher took a deep breath, feeling both relief and a renewed sense of purpose. He had returned, but he was no longer the same man who had fallen from the cliff. Back at his cabin, he paused at the doorway, taking in the familiar sights and smells. He noticed details he had once ignored, the way sunlight hit the roof, the scent of fresh earth in the fields, and the quiet hum of life around him. He realized that the world he had left was not just familiar, but full of opportunities for reflection and growth.
The lessons from the forest had taught him to notice, appreciate, and respect every small part of life.
Over the next days, the rancher resumed his routines, tending to the animals and maintaining the property. But yet he did so with a new perspective. He worked with patience, observing his surroundings carefully and applying the problem-solving skills he had learned from the tribe. Brace. Tasks that once seemed mundane now carried a sense of mindfulness and care. The rancher found joy in small successes, the way a horse responded to his guidance, the smooth repair of a fence, or the quiet satisfaction of a well-tended garden. Visitors to the ranch noticed a change in him. He moved with calm confidence, spoke with quiet authority, and showed a deep respect for nature and people alike. Though he rarely spoke of the tribe, the lessons they had taught him were evident in his actions. He had gained resilience, patience, and a sense of humility that could only come from surviving a life-threatening experience and learning from those who lived in harmony with the world around them. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, the rancher stood at the edge of his property, gazing toward the forest where he had spent so many weeks. Memories of the tribe, their gestures, and the lessons they had shared filled his mind. He realized that his life had been irrevocably changed, not just by the accident, but by the people who had saved him, guided him, and trusted him. He felt gratitude, humility, and a quiet sense of wonder. Though he had returned to his old life, the rancher carried the forest within him. He had learned to observe, to move with patience, to respect life in all its forms, and to trust both his instincts and others. The accident that had once seemed like a tragedy had become a turning point, a journey of survival, growth, and transformation. The rancher often thought about the tribe, imagining their lives deep in the forest. He wondered how they fared, what challenges they faced, and how many other travelers they had helped in silence. Though he would likely never return, he knew that their influence would remain with him forever, shaping how he lived, worked, and viewed the world. In the quiet of the night, as stars sparkled overhead, the rancher reflected on his journey. He had survived a fall from a cliff, faced pain and uncertainty, and learned to trust and observe in ways he never thought possible. He had been cared for, taught, and transformed by a mysterious and wise community. And now he had returned to his home, stronger, wiser, and filled with gratitude for life and its unpredictable lessons. The rancher realized that survival was more than enduring danger. It was about learning, adapting, and growing from every experience. He had been changed not only by the forest and the tribe, but by his own determination and courage. He understood that life was fragile yet full of opportunity, and that trust, patience, and care could create bonds that transcended words. As the night deepened, he stood silently on his porch, looking toward the horizon. The forest loomed in the distance, mysterious and enduring, a reminder of the journey that had shaped him. He felt a quiet joy in knowing that he had survived, learned, and grown. The rancher knew that his life would never be the same, and he welcomed the change with an open heart, ready to face whatever the future might hold. And with that, he turned toward his home, carrying not only the lessons of survival, but also the strength, wisdom, and gratitude that had been gifted to him by the mysterious forest tribe. He had fallen. He had been saved, and he had returned, transformed, whole, and ready to live with purpose.